Well, it's week 4 here at the PFN Miami Dolphins podcast. Dolphins 1-2 versus the 0-3 Tennessee Titans. Monday night, Dallas Robinson is the nation prepared for Snoop Huntley versus Will Levis.
Oh my God, I don't know. I mean, we had that classic Titans-Dolphins game. I mean, last season, I feel like we're in for something great. You know, another Monday Night Football doubleheader. It seems like Vic Fangio doesn't like that. He seems like he doesn't like the idea of Monday Night doubleheaders. I don't agree. I enjoy as much football as you want to give me. So I'm ready for whatever this week 4 Monday Night doubleheader brings.
Yeah. You feed me, crap. I'm still going to eat it because we love the product, I guess. But this is certainly not what the NFL had in mind when it was putting together its schedule. You mentioned last year was a classic. Obviously, it was 15 points in the final 2.5 minutes for the Titans. The Dolphins, I kind of wrecked their season. Not kind of, it did. They had to go on the road to Kansas City because of that 2.5 minute meltdown. And here we are talking about, how important of a season this is for Mike McDaniel and company and how they finally need to win a playoff game. But, the way they looked on Sunday, they can't beat anybody they play that way, can they?
I mean, it was rough. It was really rough. I watched the game again last night just to kind of prepare for this show, and it was rough. It was one of the rougher games I've watched this year. I'm not going to lie. Like, it's tough. I'm not sure that Skylar Thompson is an NFL caliber quarterback. I mean, it's just not looking that way, and it really does kind of. How did the Dolphins decide to keep Skylar Thompson over Mike White? I would want to know what went into that process, because if this is the result, then man, did Mike White look that bad over the summer? It's kind of hard to believe. It's hard to know where the Dolphins go from here after this performance. We can get into Snoop Huntley and Tim Boyle and all these other options the Dolphins have that they can turn to after Skylar Thompson got hurt on Sunday, but it's a pretty bleak outlook going forward, I think. And instead of hoping that there's going to be a quarterback solution, I think the Dolphins fans really have to look at Mike McDaniel and say, how are you going to get us through this without Tua on the field?
Yeah, 100%. You're absolutely right. I think Sunday was one of the worst days that Mike McDaniel's had as Miami Dolphins head coach, because he had 10 days to prepare. He knew, to your point, what he was working with Skylar Thompson. He chose Skylar Thompson over Mike White. And I do have to say, in the moment, it seemed like not a bad decision. Skylar Thompson was at the very least even with Mike White. I've seen hundreds upon hundreds of practice snaps of both those guys. We saw the preseason, and the Dolphins definitely moved the ball better with Skylar than they did with Mike. So it's not like they said goodbye to Sam Darnold or something, right? It's right. Like they said goodbye to a guy who couldn't get on an active roster after he was cut. So I think we do need to. The mistake wasn't made in August. The mistake was made in March, right? The mistake was made in March and April when they decided that those were the two guys they were going to roll with, knowing that Tua Tagovailoa has a long history. Yes, I know he was healthy last year, but it was the only time since his sophomore year at Alabama, he hadn't missed multiple games this season due to injury. He is an injury-prone quarterback. So I guess we can discuss why they made that choice. I have a theory, and that theory was you go back to March and April of this past offseason, and things weren't great with the Dolphins and Tua Tagovailoa from a contract standpoint. And did they want to bring in, even though he wouldn't have played these last week and this week because of suspension, did they not bring in Jimmy Garoppolo because they didn't want a long shadow of a backup quarterback hanging over their guy who was in a contract situation, and would his camp think the Dolphins were playing some sort of leverage game, which, to be honest, they wouldn't have been. They just would have been doing the good due diligence of protecting yourself against what we're seeing play out now. For whatever reason, they decided not to get a clear upgrade as a backup quarterback, whereas teams, I think 4 teams around the league played and started backup / journeyman / retread quarterbacks won, and the Dolphins, trying to go with a homegrown product, got their doors blown off. So to me, I think, getting back to the broader point, I think it is put up or shut up time for Mike McDaniel. Honestly, it is. It's like we've got to see. There's way too much talent. I'm not going to forgive their last 2 losses, but they're understandable the Bills and the Seahawks are two of the 12 best teams in the league. I mean, one was on the road, and the Bills might be the best team of football right now. I mean,
Oh yeah.
They're blowing the doors off people. So I mean, I'm not going to forgive them, but I can understand your rival beating the hell out of you because that's what they always do, and then going on the road and having that product against the Seahawks team at home. They lose on Monday, though. It's, especially if they don't learn from what they've seen the last 2 weeks, which is they cannot run that version of Mike McDaniel's offense with anyone but Tua. Like, you cannot, if they go in there and they throw the ball 40 times on Monday and they have all this motion and misdirection and they expect the guy who's been on the team for 2 weeks to operate that's foolish. I think they need to get down to the basics of what they do. Go back and watch Mike Shanahan film from the late 90s. That's what they need to be doing, okay? Sure, you do outside zone stretch runs, have that a big part of what you do. Play action chunk plays, man. I mean, honestly, that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Maybe run a little zone read with Stu Huntley, who I think is going to be the starter, but he needs to be able to demonstrate that it's not one size fits all for his offense, because if he does that, it's going to be what we saw in Seattle last week.
I mean, you're seeing other coaches around the league get it done with a backup quarterback, right? And get it done with a backup quarterback who is kind of similar to Stu Huntley. Look at the Packers. They're 2-0 without Jordan Love. They run a pretty similar system to what the Dolphins do with Matt LaFleur up in Green Bay. Matt LaFleur, is Matt LaFleur or Mike LaFleur? It's Matt LaFleur, right? I can never get rid of it.
Mike was the OC of the Jets.
Mike is in Los Angeles. It's been an incredibly impressive coaching job up there the past couple of weeks. I mean, some of the run game concepts that the Packers have used with Malik Willis at quarterback in week 2 were incredibly impressive. They ran the ball 90 times over the past 2 weeks. It was like only 4 teams over the past 10 years have done that.
Wow.
But then Malik Willis looked really good as a passer last week, using some of those play action shots that you just mentioned. There's a way to get this done, I think. There's a way to use a quarterback who might not have the experience, who might not be as comfortable in the offense as your starter, and still get the job done. I think Mike McDaniel has to come out and do that. And you look at the Dolphins' upcoming schedule. There's no reason they can't win their next 3 games. At least go 2-1. I mean, Tennessee, New England, and Indianapolis. I don't think those are anybody's idea of like scary teams. And aside from New England, like really scary defenses either. I think that for the most part, especially with Indy, like what you're getting on defense. I think that there's a way to attack these defenses with the right scheme, with the right combination of players, that I think it's time for Mike McDaniel to kind of show us what he's bringing to the table. We know Mike McDaniel is an excellent schemer in the right situation. I think we need to see if he can do it without all his amazing pieces. Go back to that backup quarterback discussion. I think, the Dolphins were never going to get Sam Darnold to come to Miami and be a backup, right? He wanted to go somewhere where he had a chance to start, but there were other guys out there. Like you mentioned Garoppolo, Joe Flacco was out there. There were some other options, but I think that does make a lot of sense. And that's something I hadn't considered, that about the contract situation and how that could have played into things. That we kind of mentioned it last week, that these are human beings, right? There's a lot of this locker room off-field stuff that maybe we don't always think about from the outside. That, hey, if you go sign a Joe Flacco, who had a really good run with the Cleveland Browns, who kind of took over for Deshaun Watson, and a lot of Browns fans and players wanted Joe Flacco to come back as the starter. You bring him down to Miami with backing up Tua, a guy who's had injury issues and has had fans not always happy with his play. I think it could have created a situation like you're mentioning. So that's a really good point. I think it comes down to, we got to see what Mike McDaniel can do. And I think you're right that Snoop Huntley is the play, and we can get into that. I'm really curious to see what this game plan can look like if the Dolphins have already decided on Snoop Huntley, if they have this whole week to kind of design a game plan around a mobile quarterback like him. I'm really curious to see what this could look like on Monday night.
Yeah, me too. And one quick thought. This is the last time they ever considered Tua's feelings. Like, I mean,
yeah,
like they've done absolutely everything right by the guy now. They have given him the contract he's wanted. They have kind of played the delicate game of not bringing in a potential threat for him as a backup. No more. Like,
yeah,
forget about that. Okay, yeah, do whatever you can to get the guy healthy. Support him in every possible way, from a mental, physical, even football aspect, but you have a multi-billion-dollar investment you're protecting, right? And you cannot risk that investment on the health of a guy who can't stay healthy. And Tua might not like it, but they are absolutely in a quarterback market in the draft this year. They 100% are, if not day one, absolutely day two. They have to go and evaluate this class of quarterbacks, and they have to draft one. And if that ruffles feathers, so be it. Like, don't care. Honestly, don't care. Like, Tua, you worry about you, bro. We're going to worry about what we have to, both short and long term. Yeah, the days of, oh, Tua, is everything okay? Let's get your mind right and all that. No. You cannot risk what they built. And again, I mean, think about the plan they put in place, right? This had been a 6-year now rebuild. The teardown in 2019 was Flores' first year. 3 years of Flores, 3 years of McDaniel. What do they have to show for it? Two playoff appearances, right? 3? Like, did they make one? They made it 1 year with Flores or no? I don't know.
I don't believe they did. No,
they never made the playoffs with Flores. They had 2 winning seasons, but never made the postseason. 2 winning seasons with McDaniel, both times flamed out in the first round of the playoffs. You've done absolutely everything you can to make this work. You've got to be able to pivot now. And yes, absolutely. If Tua gets a complete clean bill of health and he goes into the offseason as the clear starter, that's great. But you know what? Still draft a guy. And honestly, bring in another vet as well. Like, have 3 quarterbacks. We kind of joked on our Slack board. Oh, I'm excited for the all Alabama quarterback room in 2025. It was Tua, Mac Jones, and Milroe. I mean, that's like, we kid, but that's kind of like what it's got to look like in 2025, because we cannot be right back where we are right now. I think you make a good point about the Packers. I haven't, to be completely honest, I haven't been able to watch a lot of them. They just handled the Titans pretty tidily, right?
Yeah.
Mike and Matt are close friends. They talked about just a couple of weeks ago, Grant DuBose, the Dolphins claimed off waivers. Mike got Matt's opinion on that. I think he absolutely needs to be in his buddy's ear saying, hey, tell me everything you know about how to get a mobile quarterback who might not be the most accurate guy, but can do things with his legs and create off script and all that to beat these Titans, because I don't think we're putting too fine a point on it. Like, this is kind of their season. These next 2 weeks are kind of their season. If they go to 1-4 with, you go and look at how that schedule is backloaded, and these are games you can't lose.
Oh, absolutely not. No, I think at the least, I mean, I think they need to go 2-1, right? Through these next 3, I think at the least, I think they would have to. And yeah, I think it's the Packers have given the Dolphins the game plan, right? They've gotten the answers to the test already. They can kind of see what works against this Titans defense. There's no harm in copying it. Coaches copy things all the time around the NFL. They're always stealing plays and concepts. There's no reason the Dolphins can't try and do exactly what the Packers did last week. Now, on the other side of the ball, you can't exactly force Will Levis to throw you a pick 6 like he did last week. You're kind of hoping for that. But hey, that's what he does. That's what he does, is turn the ball over at critical, back-breaking times. So I think if you're just hoping for that, you might get that too.
What's wild is, before we jumped on, because I tried to do a little bit of prep for the next week opponent, and I hadn't seen much of the Titans. And I was stunned by how not bad their defense is. I mean, from a metric standpoint, just a play in, play out standpoint, they're better than the Dolphins. They're like 4.7 yards per play. That's marvelous. Is it 5.4 yards per pass attempt against them? We certainly look at their opponents, and they haven't exactly, Bears, Jets, Packers. The Jets have Rodgers, but the other 2 teams have developing quarterbacks, I think, is a fair way to put it. So it's not like you're facing Josh Allen and Geno Smith in back-to-back weeks. I get that, but regardless, the only reason the Titans are as bad as they are right now is because of the quarterback play. They are -7 in turnovers, which is the reason that they're giving up 26 points a game. But everywhere else, their defense is fine. And, we can talk about the weapons they have, and the Dolphins are going to be down at least one corner, it looks like. So, there are ways that you can turn your head and say, this game could get ugly for the Dolphins as well.
Oh yeah, I think it could get ugly all around. I think it's going to be an ugly game all around. The biggest thing I had took away from watching this Titans team, even aside from Will Levis, who I don't think is playing well, he's made some throws. He's got a good arm. Like he makes some good throws. He actually did okay once the Titans were in Packers territory. Like he can do some things. It's just those self-inflicted errors that keep coming back. Like everyone saw the pick six that cost them week one. The fumble, like when he was fully like aligned with the ground, and it's stuff you've never seen on a football field for the most part. And then a pick six last week, it's like pretty devastating. But even aside from all that, the main takeaway was that this Titans offensive line is god awful. It is absolutely terrible, and it's kind of hard to imagine because Bill Callahan, who's maybe the greatest offensive line coach of all time, is now coaching in Tennessee under his son, the head coach Brian Callahan. I guess coaching can only go so far because this is not a good offensive line. Nicholas Petit-Frere, their right tackle, got repeatedly beat on Sunday and was eventually benched. I don't know if he's going to play or if Jalen Duncan's going to play at right tackle. Either way, I think this is a line that Anthony Weaver and this Dolphins front can absolutely attack. And you're going to have to, I think. You're going to have to send pressure and get Levis into those situations where he can make mistakes. That, to me, that is the key kind of focal point of where the Dolphins need to attack is just how do we send pressure? How do we get in Levis's face? And how do we make him do the things that he's already been doing through 3 weeks?
Yeah, to your point, the offensive line is so incredibly bad. Their sack rate is 16%. So you're talking about 1 out of every 7 dropbacks or pass attempts, I guess. There's a sack, and that's obviously worse in the NFL. Dolphins in week 5 get the Patriots, who are 30th in sack rate. So, I mean, you are and maybe next week they have Bradley Chubb back, and certainly Chop Robinson hasn't had the top line production that you'd like to see, but his pressure rate's through the roof. Their team has done a very good job of disrupting the opposing team's quarterback, and they've done that despite Dallas. This is an insane stat. Never playing with the lead in 2024.
That's crazy.
So if you're able to generate that kind of pressure on a quarterback, knowing that they're not in any stressful situations at all because the opposing team is always ahead of you, I think if you somehow can manage to score points in the first quarter, which I know would be a shocking revelation for the Miami Dolphins in 2024, but if you're able to actually get a team down, yeah, then you can really unleash the dogs and get after those guys.
And I think they'll be able to. And then I think, you mentioned the Titans defense. They are playing really well. I think that will be a consideration. They made a lot of additions over the offseason. They went like on a true defensive spending spree, traded for L'Jarius Sneed from the Chiefs, who was maybe the best corner in the NFL last year, signed Chidobe Awuzie from the Bengals, who he might not play this week. I know he's injured. He might not be available this week. They traded for Ernest Jones, linebacker from the Rams. They have a lot of good pieces. I think the most impressive piece through these 3 weeks has been Tavondre Sweat, 2nd-round rookie out of Texas, true nose tackle, which we're not seeing a ton of those in the NFL anymore. Like true nose tackle. Fell to the 2nd round because of some off-field stuff. I think otherwise he would have been a 1st-round pick. Through these first 3 games, he has shown why he would have been a 1st-round pick. Just destroying people at the point of attack, constantly getting through the line, getting pressures, making plays in the run game. I don't think you see, nose tackles, interior guys really make this sort of impact right from the jump like he is. I think it's been incredibly impressive. So if I'm the Dolphins, I'm a little worried, man. Aaron Brewer is the smallest center in the NFL? Maybe got to be one of the smallest, right? I'm a little worried about how he's going to be lining up against a 340, 50-pound nose tackle and how he's going to handle that. And I'm curious to see what the protection plans for Miami looks like. I think one kind of benefit that we talked about last week is Dolphins should know what they're going to get on defense. The Titans run the same type of, Mike McDaniel inspired defense that the Dolphins do, that the Dolphins saw last week in Seattle. I think from that point, they won't see any surprises. But yeah, I think that matchup I'm going to be watching is Brewer versus Sweat. And man, if he's getting through the line constantly and affecting Huntley or Boyle or whoever else is back there under center, I think that is kind of going to be the main concern for this Dolphins offense.
Yeah, getting pressure up the middle is obviously the biggest concern for that offensive line. Their tackles, doesn't sound maybe like Teron Armstead's going to play. He's dealing with a concussion, eye injury combo deal. But Kendall Lamb, he's serviceable. They can get by for a game or two if they have to. Haven't even mentioned Jeffrey Simmons yet. So, yeah. I mean, there's some concerns on that interior offensive line for sure for the Dolphins. Do you think there's a chance we see Mason Rudolph on Monday night?
Yes. Oh, yes, I think there's a chance. Yeah, I mean, it's a little similar to the Carolina situation, right? Where it almost felt like they were benching Bryce Young a little too early, but it also felt like it was way overdue, right? How can it be both of those? I don't know, but it kind of felt that way. I think we're getting there with Levis. I mean, you can see it with Brian Callahan. He is visibly frustrated. He's visibly annoyed with these mistakes that Will Levis is constantly making. I spent a lot of time thinking about the Bengals. Brian Callahan is not exactly the most like vocal guy. He's not going to get in your face. So to see him, how he's been reacting to some of these Will Levis mistakes has been pretty eye-opening, because that's not who Brian Callahan typically is. Like that's not his personality. I think he's kind of walked some of that back. Like he doesn't want to be perceived as that type of head coach in these past couple of weeks. But I think the frustration has been evident. And Mason Rudolph is nobody's idea of like a world beater or anything like that. He helped the Steelers get into the playoffs last year, won 3 games, played pretty well. I guess the question is, can he operate the offense more efficiently than Will Levis? And I think that's what you saw in Carolina, that Bryce Young just wasn't making even the routine throws in Carolina, right? And they were hoping that Andy Dalton could do that. Andy Dalton came in week 3 and did much more than that. He was, one of the best quarterbacks of the week. I couldn't believe it. I don't think Mason Rudolph is going to do that for the Titans. I do wonder if Brian Callahan and the rest of that coaching staff says, Will Levis is just simply not operating this offense on an NFL caliber level. Can Mason Rudolph do that? He's not going to give us the high-end throws that Will Levis might, but he's not going to give us those self-inflicted errors either. I don't know. I'm not sure where Callahan kind of lands on that medium, but yeah, if things get bad on Monday night, I do think there's a chance that we see Rudolph.
I just looked it up. This is the lowest total of the week, 36.5. And honestly, I would be hard to talk myself into the over on that.
I think I would too. It's tough.
The only way you could talk yourself into it is if you like just a ton of short fields. Like just like there, it's like a 5 or 6 turnover game, and everyone's starting the third line.
Yeah, or some defensive scores, something, another pick 6, another sack, fumble, something like that. Otherwise, I think it's tough. Yeah, it's tough to see where these points are going to come from. Maybe Devon Chain goes off and has a really nice day against this Titans defense. I can't see that happening on the other side. Tony Pollard has been okay. Tyjae Spears has been okay. I really can't see that running game getting going with the state of the offensive line, as we mentioned. So, yeah, I'm projecting a lower scoring game. If you want points on Monday, you might have to turn into the Lions-Seahawks game that's starting. Which one comes first? I don't even remember. The Lions and Seahawks is second, right?
The Dolphins and the Titans play at 7:30.
Okay.
So yeah, it's like I have a bunch of friends who have season tickets. I have friends that were looking to get tickets this week. Guys, This is a absolute buyer's market, okay? If you want to go to a Dolphins game, have a chance to go to see a nationally televised primetime Dolphins game, this is your moment, okay? I think the cheapest get-in 6 days out was $19.
Ooh.
So, yeah, there's honestly, it would be cheaper to fly here and go see a Dolphins game here than most teams in your own market, right? You get a weekend in South Florida, and it would be as much as going to see, I don't know, the Chiefs at Arrowhead. It really is great value here in South Florida in week 4. All right, so we've spent the last 25 minutes talking about maybe the worst team in the AFC East right now. Let's talk about the better teams. I mean, the Bills and Jets have you been surprised by either of what you've seen from either of these teams so far?
I'll say I've been more surprised by the Jets, even though I was in on the Jets because I think that their roster talent was just incredible. I did not expect the version of Aaron Rodgers that we got last Thursday night against the Patriots. I thought you watch Rodgers over the first 2 weeks, especially again when they played the Titans in week 2, and you're like, okay, this could work. They've got enough talent on offense. They've got Garrett Wilson. They've got Breece Hall. They've got a good offensive line. Got an amazing defense. We talked about it on this show, I think. You get league average quarterback play. This is probably a playoff team. Like, you can probably maybe win a wild card game. If they get the version of Aaron Rodgers that we saw on Thursday night, I think this team can win the Super Bowl, man. Like, this was vintage Rodgers. He was making some of these off-platform throws, hitting these tight windows. This was not just a 40-year-old guy dropping back and taking what the defense gives him. He was creating. He looked like the guy who won back-to-back MVPs. Is that going to happen every week? I don't know. I don't know. This was against the Patriots. Patriots have a good defense. I don't know if Rodgers is going to be capable of this every week. If this is the level he's playing at, I really do think that they're a Super Bowl caliber team. Bills are the best team in football, man. Like, this is unbelievable. I thought that a lot of the talk about their step back was kind of overstated, but man, I did not think that they were going to be at this level through 3 games, especially on defense. Like, you lost Matt Milano, one of the best linebackers in the NFL, for the second straight season. You lost Terrell Bernard, who's like your next best linebacker in week 1 or 2. They haven't fallen off at all. I mean, Christian Benford, former late round pick, is playing like an all pro at corner. DeMar Hamlin's coming in and making interceptions. Like, it's everywhere. Greg Rousseau from Von Miller looks reborn. I thought Von Miller's career was over. He looks like he's back to being that all pro that he was a few years ago. It's really, really impressive. And, I think especially from Buffalo, I'm going to be doing something later today about the 2025 head coaching candidates. I think Joe Brady, offensive coordinator, and Bobby Babich, the defensive coordinator, both those guys I think are going to be at the top of head coaching lists for any team that needs a head coach next offseason.
I don't know what would crush Dolphins fans more, the Bills or Jets winning the Super Bowl, but it is a nightmare scenario, to say the least. To your point about Rodgers, totally agree that his play was off the charts in week 3. Sometimes, though, with these old guys, like this might be an unfair comparison. I'm just going to say it. Jordan with the Wizards, he would go out and have a 45-point night, and you'd say, "Oh my God, it's 1995 all over again." And then regression to the mean, just because he's an old guy and you can't sustain that. So, certainly it was great to see, if you're a Jets fan, to see that. It's kind of what the plan had been for the last 2 years, right? Everything you would have been envisioning, you saw on the field. I'm going to be have been proven wrong before, and I'll be proven wrong again, I'm sure. But I think that's the peak. I don't think that's the baseline of what we're going to see from him.
It very well could be. I mean, I'm looking at their schedule. The next 4 weeks, Broncos, pretty good defense. Denver, pretty good defense this year. Vikings, most complicated defense in the NFL to face. Then the Bills, which are going to be an incredible game. And the Steelers, who are probably the best defense through 3 weeks. Like, he's going to face challenges over these next 4 weeks. And, whether they can handle it is anyone's guess. I don't think that they necessarily have an offensive schematic advantage like a lot of these other teams around the NFL do. Like, Nathaniel Hackett is, quote unquote, the offensive coordinator, but I think we really know who's calling the plays there. It's Mr. Rodgers himself. I don't know that they necessarily have this kind of schematic advantage that a lot of teams do, but you've got Aaron Rodgers, who's a future Hall of Famer, one of the best quarterbacks to ever play. So I think you're right. At this age, coming off the injury, with players that he doesn't have a long track record with, I do think it's a fair point to be like, is this going to be how he plays? That's fair to wonder. But if he does, man, this team is going places.
Oh, and if he does, the AFC is just absolutely brutal. I mean, absolutely brutal. And from a Dolphins perspective, if this is who Rodgers is, you're playing for third, and you just got to hope third's good enough to get you in, right? Because unless Tua comes back and they're that 70-point team that we saw 52 weeks ago. Yeah, I don't see how they can go toe to toe with either of those teams right now. The Bills, to me, sometimes worry about teams peaking too early, and you'd much rather see them do this late December, early January than September, for sure. But they're the only team in the league scoring right now, right? Yeah. I mean, the points are down all across the board. What they put up the other night, 47.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, it is absolutely incredible what Josh Allen is doing. If there were no Patrick Mahomes, how would we talk about Josh Allen? Like, I feel like he gets kind of the short stick because Mahomes is maybe the greatest quarterback of all time. Josh Allen is like right there for me. Like, he is just unbelievable to watch.
And I made this point on Twitter. He is way more entertaining to watch than Patrick Mahomes. Like, from like an aesthetic, like, you want to watch something and just have your mind blown. yeah, Patrick Mahomes can make every throw and he is the GOAT and all that. I get that. Josh Allen's just a blast to watch on television.
He absolutely is. And don't look now, but he hasn't thrown an interception this year. Like he's always been better, I think, at avoiding those negative plays than people think. Like, yeah, he's always thrown a lot of picks, but you look at the EPA or lost in those picks, or the win probability lost in those picks, they're not coming in critical situations. Like when he's turning the ball over, it's usually not in a situation where it's going to kill you. But he's not even doing that this year. Like he's making the big explosive plays. He's getting every first down you need when you got to ask him to get one on the ground. He's getting that. He's doing this without Stephon Diggs, without Gabe Davis, with kind of this ragtag group of wide receivers and tight ends and running backs. And he's also not making the big time negative plays. Like I really don't know what else you could ask from a quarterback at this point.
What's crazy is, I mean, if the Dolphins can get it back and they can get their quarterback and they look like the team we thought we would see.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's another division in the conference that would come close to the AFC East. The North, I mean, I think we saw glimmers of it, but I think Baltimore's going to figure it out. Cincinnati's a mess, man. What? I mean, they're staring at 0-4, right? I mean, it's a real possibility they go 0-4.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the offense was great on Monday night. They did not punt, did not turn the ball over, but neither did Washington. Neither did Jaden Daniels. Right, the defense is an absolute mess. They can't stop anybody. I would say it's tough because I think the depth maybe in the AFC North is a little better because
it's tough to say. The question is, do you believe Pittsburgh? I mean, do you believe the Steelers are real? That when you're talking about the AFC North, is like, is this sustainable what we're seeing?
Yeah, and it's, I guess, like real is a tough question because they haven't played the toughest opponents. They haven't really done anything on offense. They've scored one touchdown, but like I said, I think they have the best defense in the league, at least through 3 weeks. And Justin Fields, we talked about Allen avoiding negative plays. Justin Fields is doing the same thing. He's avoiding turnovers. He's getting yards on the ground, and he finally looked like a competent passer in week 3. I think that this team actually can keep winning like this, but it's kind of like we talked to the Rodgers. Like Fields feels like he's right on that ledge where it's like at any second he could just turn into the guy we saw with Chicago, where he's losing balls and throwing picks. But so far, he has played much calmer, much more collected than I ever saw in Chicago. And I think that's probably a testament to Arthur Smith, a new offensive coordinator in Pittsburgh, who is running the same scheme he ran in Atlanta, but it's working a little better through 3 weeks. And I kind of like what Pittsburgh's doing, at least so far.
It's incredible how much coaching is the determining factor in the NFL. That scheme fit and just competence makes such a huge difference. And to me, that's why, getting back as we wrap this up, getting back to how shocking that game was, because they looked incompetent. And that's weird. Like they've had bad games before, but just like they can't. I mean, certainly the playoff game in Arrowhead, it was 40 below, and I give them a pass on that just because you're going from 80 degrees to 30 below. I mean, weather was perfect in Seattle. I know it gets loud, but these guys never had noise before, and they look like they weren't coached. And that to me is, I mean, that Mike's a very, very introspective guy. He's got to be pulling his hair out this week. Just like he's got to be so embarrassed and so frustrated and so. And again, we got to see what the answer is. What you're doing isn't working, and I think Ingold kind of hit on this during his news conference on Tuesday. Is like our 2023 identity isn't carrying over to 2024. We've got to create a new one. Can you do that on the fly? We'll find out. But again, history would not at all look kindly on this coaching staff in 2024 if they go 5-12, 6-11 with the roster they have. It would just be a complete disaster.
No, absolutely. I think we need to see some more creativity. We need to see some more malleability with what this offense looks like. I really do. And I think you've got Jalen Waddle, you've got Tyreek Hill, you've got Devon Chain. It doesn't really matter who's under quarterback. There's no excuse for looking as poor as they did on Sunday. And no one gave them a chance on Sunday, and then they totally delivered on all that negativity, right? They did it like from snap one. It just looked exactly like everyone thought it was going to look. And I think that's really unfortunate because, like we've talked about, you've seen around the league other coaching staffs be able to take less than ideal situations and at least make a game out of it. Not saying you have to go out and win. I think Seattle's a really good team who's gonna do really good things this year. But to not ever feel like you were in the game, I think is pretty disappointing when you look around the league and see what other teams are willing to do. So I think that's kind of what I'm looking for going into week 4. Like from a win perspective, yeah, if they don't win this game, I think their season is over. From like feeling good about Mike McDaniel perspective, like this has got to be at least a game. Like if they get blown out again like they did on Sunday, I think you've got to have serious questions about like what is this offensive staff actually doing? Like the Office Space meme. What do you say you do here if you can't even compete in a game without Tua? What are we doing here? So I would like to see something that looks like an NFL offense, like whether that means 14 points, whether that means 21 points, whatever the final numbers are, just something that resembles an NFL offense, I think would be a good step forward in week 4.
We get our picks in early in the week. I took the Dolphins because I mean, it's at home, and I think the Titans are a much worse team. Like just from a talent standpoint, the Dolphins. I mean, you can only say this because it's possible Tim Boyle's quarterback. We haven't seen yet, who they're going to announce their starter. We're assuming it's Snoop, but it's possible it's Tim Boyle. I think quarterback is the only place where you're like, oh yeah, dude, Titans have an edge, but it's at home. To your point, like them losing 3 in a row I just don't see it. I think the Dolphins win this game.
Yeah, it's really tough. You're reminding me that I have not made my picks for the week, so I've got to go do that after we're done here. It's tough, I have a really hard time with this choice. A lot of me wants to pick the Titans. I'm not sure what this Dolphins offense is going to look like. I mean, Tennessee needs this game too. They're 0-3. Their backs are up against the wall. It's not like they don't have a lot to play for either. But I'll go with the Dolphins as well. I think a home game, as much as they need this game, as much as Mike McDaniel you're talking about is probably embarrassed after week 3. I think there will be a better plan in place, and I just don't trust Will Levis not to make this kind of error that he's made these last 3 weeks. And you get one of those back-breaking errors, that could be enough to win in a game like this that I think will be pretty close. So I'll go Dolphins as well, but man, it wouldn't surprise me if it goes the other way.
But hammer the under.
Oh my God, yes. Like as low as we can possibly go. Let's hammer the under.
That should be the name of this podcast, as low as we can possibly go. All right. Well, Dallas, I think we can announce this. You're going to be here more than on a part-time basis.
Yes, sir. I will be here every week going forward as we talk the Dolphins. So yeah, I'm excited to watch. This is not exactly the version of the Dolphins that I wanted to kind of be diving into this year, but
sign up for.
It's okay. It's okay. You can make up for it. We'll discuss my fees later. Maybe like one of those cool like 90s Dolphins starter jackets that Shula used to wear. Send me one of those. We'll make up for having to watch this team this year. But yeah, I'm excited to be here. Excited to talk football with you all season.
You bring a perspective that we need, which is intelligence on this show. So thank you, sir. All right, guys. I'm going to say this not tongue in cheek. I hope you enjoy the game. And we'll be back in 7 days to break it all down.